Hi everybody, and welcome to this module on riparian ecosystems. This unit introduces you to riparian ecosystems, and it sets the scene for the next unit, which is on plants in the riparian corridor. By the end of this unit, you'll be able to explain what riparian vegetation is and name some of the main threats to this ecosystem. Let's start by defining riparian. The word riparian is derived from the Latin word ripa, which means a stream or a riverbank. The Latin word riparius means growing along a bank. So when we talk about riparian vegetation, what we're talking about are the terrestrial plants growing along the banks of bodies of fresh water. Ecologists recognize that there's a two-way stream of influence here. Riparian vegetation includes plants whose growth is directly influenced by their proximity to the waterway, so by the greater availability of water in the soil, and plants that have a direct influence on the waterway itself and the quality of the habitat. According to NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, these plants support essential habitat processes such as temperature control, bank stability, structural complexity, the filtering of pollutants, and contributions of large logs and other woody debris to a stream. A body of water may flow into the ocean, into a landlocked body of water, or into a freshwater wetland with links to saltwater wetlands and then to the ocean. The Watsonville Slough system, which you can see in the map on the right here, and Elkhorn Slough in Moss Landing are both really good examples of local bodies of water that link to saltwater marsh before connecting with the ocean. Waterways begin at springs or seeps and gather runoff from drainage areas as they flow from their headwaters to the lowlands. The area of land that drains into a waterway is called a watershed. On the right, you can see a map of all the watersheds in Santa Cruz County. We have 17 main watersheds, and our three largest rivers are the San Lorenzo River, Soquel Creek, and the Pajaro River. In addition to these, there are numerous smaller creeks, as you can see on the map, and all of these waterways have riparian vegetation associated with them. All waterways on the coast are fed by rainfall. In the interior, they're fed mainly by spring snowmelt. But in all of these rivers, both inland and coastal, the flow of water declines over the dry summer months of our Mediterranean-type climate, and some rivers may run completely dry in the summer. As the water in creeks and rivers runs downstream, many changes may take place in and along the banks of the waterway. The channel may widen and narrow, the banks may become steeper or flatter. The amount of sunlight reaching the water surface can change as the tree canopy changes, and this can result in fluctuations in the water temperature, which can impact aquatic life and insects which lay their eggs in the water. The water velocity can fluctuate, and water quality may change too, especially when the flow of water is fast in the winter and sediments washed into the water, making it turbid. Disturbance events such as prolonged drought, flood, and fire can also alter the width and depth of the channel and alter the riparian vegetation. So as you can see, riparian ecosystems are dynamic and can be a really challenging environment for both plants and animal life. Healthy riparian ecosystems provide a range of ecosystem services. So let's take a quick look at some of those benefits. Vegetation in the riparian corridor is diverse with a layered architecture that provides rich habitat for a wide range of wildlife. The vegetation provides cover, food, water, and travel routes that connect riparian with upland habitats. As mentioned earlier, the influence of vegetation extends to the waterway and aquatic life too. Overhanging branches shade the water during the warm, dry summer months, keeping the water temperature cooler, which favors the survival of fish and young amphibian species. The roots and foliage of riparian vegetation protect soil particles from detaching from stream banks, and this can reduce the input of fine sediment to the waterway that can bury spawning gravels. Spawning gravels are the gravelly areas on the bed of the waterway where fish such as steelhead salmon lay their eggs. As mentioned in the previous slide, vegetation can stabilize the banks of waterways. It can also slow the flow of water, which can help provide flood protection and erosion control. Slowing the flow of water, allowing it to remain in the channel for longer, can increase the rate of water percolation into the ground, which can help with aquifer replenishment. Locally, this is particularly important in the Soquel Creek watershed, where all the water that's sold by Soquel Creek Water District is pumped out of the aquifer, which has been in overdraft for many years. Riparian areas also provide us with a diverse range of recreational activities, from hiking, camping, birdwatching, fishing and boating, to more cultural pastimes such as painting and photography. So on this happy note, let's now take a look at some of the threats to riparian ecosystems. One of the main threats to riparian ecosystems in the past was the loss of habitat, as floodplains of the Central Valley were drained and cleared of natural vegetation to make way for farmland. Some of California's most productive farmland exists where there was once riparian woodland. As a result of large-scale draining in the early 20th century, less than 10% of the Central Valley's original riparian cover remains. It's estimated that there were around 900,000 acres of riparian woodland in the late 18th century at the beginning of European colonization of California. By the 1990s, this had been reduced to around 100,000 acres. Water quality impairment resulting from pollution is a problem in many of California's waterways. Pollution can come from the leach fields of septic tanks on residential properties in the floodplains of waterways. But runoff from agriculture has been a major source of pollutants, where surplus irrigation water or stormwater running off fields and nursery growing grounds can carry pesticides and excess nutrients from fertilizer into waterways. In recent years, the amount of agricultural pollution has been reducing as a result of the State Water Resources Board introducing regulations in 2004 that required farmers, ranchers, and nurseries to start reducing the amount of pesticides and fertilizer discharged off their properties. Some of the most harmful pesticides have also been taken off the market in California. Extraction and diversion of water for irrigation of agricultural operations and for residential use can result in low water flow and decreased habitat downstream for plant life, and especially for aquatic life. Less water can result in water temperatures downstream being hotter than aquatic life can tolerate. It can also result in fish being trapped in pools, and it can result in the lower reaches of waterways running dry. Unfortunately, the problems of over-extraction and water diversion aren't likely to be solved anytime soon. California has probably one of the most complex set of water rights and regulations of any region in the developed world. And unraveling these to create a sensible system that meets everyone's needs and takes into account population growth and changes in precipitation due to climate change is a monumental task facing legislators. Finally, invasive non-native plants also present a threat to riparian ecosystems. The most invasive plants in coastal California riparian corridors include English ivy, Cape ivy, vinca, and Himalayan blackberry. These plants can usually outcompete native vegetation. They can take over the understory, smothering native plants by blocking the light. This reduction in native plants can have an adverse effect on the wildlife they support. Invasive plants can also add to flooding problems by trapping logs that are washing downstream in the winter and creating blockages. You'll learn more about invasive plants and invasive pests in a separate module. So let's finish up this unit on riparian ecosystems. Riparian habitat accounts for only about 7% of Santa Cruz County's surface area, but the impact of poorly maintained and destroyed riparian zones has an impact on a much larger area. It can affect the quality of our drinking water, the health of our oceans, wildlife habitat, and wildlife conservation, as well as impacting flood protection. This is true not just of our county, but other regions too. The maintenance of native plants in our riparian zones is one of the main keys to the successful functioning of this ecosystem. In the next unit, you'll learn more about riparian plants. Now take a break or return to Canvas to continue with this module.